Imagine walking through an ancient graveyard at night, when suddenly, you hear footsteps behind you, but no one's there. The air turns icy. A whisper brushes your ear. You're not alone. The UK is home to some of the world's most haunted graveyards, where the dead don't just rest, they watch. From phantom funerals to vengeful spirits, these burial grounds hide horrors you won't believe. Tonight, we're stepping into the darkness to uncover the 10 most haunted graveyards in the UK, where every shadow has a story, and the ghosts are dying to meet you. Don't look behind you. Don't miss out on the scariest tales from beyond the grave. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the dead aren't done talking yet. 1 Greyfriars Kirkyard, Edinburgh. Greyfriars Kirkyard in Edinburgh is one of the most haunted graveyards in the UK, famous for its dark history and violent ghostly activity. The graveyard dates back to the 16th century and is the resting place of many souls, but one spirit stands out, the infamous Mackenzie poltergeist. This evil entity is said to be the ghost of Sir George Mackenzie, a cruel 17th-century lawyer known as Bloody Mackenzie, for his brutal persecution of Scottish Covenanters, religious rebels. He imprisoned and executed hundreds in a nearby field, now part of the graveyard. The hauntings began in 1998 when a homeless man seeking shelter broke into the Black Mausoleum, Mackenzie's grand tomb. He accidentally disturbed the resting place, unleashing something terrifying. Soon after, visitors and tour guides reported scratches, sudden bruises, burns, and even being pushed by an unseen force. Some people fainted or felt strangled, while others saw a dark, shadowy figure lurking near the tomb. One of the most famous cases was a tour guide who was attacked by the poltergeist, leaving him with deep scratches and a torn shirt. Another visitor claimed to have been thrown across the graveyard by an invisible force. Paranormal investigators who visited the site recorded eerie voices, sudden temperature drops, and ghostly apparitions. The activity became so intense that a local priest tried to bless the mausoleum, but even he was reportedly knocked unconscious during the ritual. Today, Greyfriars Kirkyard remains a hotspot for ghost hunters. Many believe the Mackenzie poltergeist is still active, especially near the Black Mausoleum. Some say the restless spirits of the Covenanters also haunt the graveyard, seeking revenge for their suffering. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the stories of violent encounters here are enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Would you dare to visit after dark? 2 Highgate Cemetery, London. Highgate Cemetery in London is one of the most famous, and feared, graveyards in the UK. Opened in 1839, this sprawling Victorian burial ground is filled with crumbling tombs, twisted trees, and eerie statues, making it the perfect setting for ghost stories. But it's not just the creepy atmosphere that sends shivers down visitors' spines, it's the real hauntings that have terrified people for decades. The most famous legend is the Highgate vampire, a tall, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes that was first spotted in the 1960s. Locals reported seeing a dark, cloaked entity lurking near the graves, and some even claimed it attacked them, leaving strange marks on their necks. The stories became so widespread that in 1970, a vampire hunt took place, with crowds gathering at the cemetery, armed with crosses and stakes. Though no vampire was found, the sightings continued. Some believe the phantom is the ghost of a medieval nobleman buried in the area, while others say it's a demonic spirit drawn to the cemetery's dark energy. But the vampire isn't the only ghost here. Visitors have reported floating figures in Victorian clothing, ghostly mourners weeping near graves, and even a mysterious woman in white who vanishes when approached. One of the most chilling accounts is from a photographer who captured a pale, skeletal face peering from behind a tombstone, even though no one was there when he took the picture. Others have heard hollow whispers and footsteps following them, only to turn and find the cemetery empty. The cemetery's most haunted spot is said to be the Egyptian Avenue, a passage lined with tombs where many have felt an unseen presence watching them. Some visitors have been overcome with sudden dread, as if something evil is nearby. Others have reported being pushed or grabbed by invisible hands. Even skeptics have left Highgate Cemetery feeling uneasy, convinced that something supernatural walks among the graves. With its Gothic atmosphere and countless ghost stories, Highgate Cemetery remains a place of mystery and fear. Whether it's the Highgate vampire, lost spirits, or something even darker, one thing is certain, this graveyard is far from peaceful. Would you risk a nighttime visit? 3 Street Nicholas Churchyard, Pluckley. If you're looking for a place where ghosts seem to outnumber the living, St. Nicholas Churchyard in Pluckley is the spot. This quiet Kentish village holds the official title of England's most haunted village, and its ancient churchyard is at the heart of the supernatural activity. With over a dozen documented ghosts, the graveyard has terrified visitors for centuries with its restless spirits and eerie occurrences. The most famous spectre here is the Screaming Wood, an area near the churchyard where people have heard blood-curdling shrieks echoing through the trees. Local legend says these are the agonized cries of a highwayman who got trapped in a hollow tree and died a slow, painful death. Even today, walkers report hearing his desperate screams at night, though no living person is ever found. Inside the churchyard itself, the ghost of Lady Deering is often seen gliding between the tombstones. Dressed in a flowing white gown, she's believed to be the spirit of a noblewoman buried in the Deering chapel. Witnesses say she appears near her tomb, her face filled with sorrow, before vanishing into thin air. Some claim to have felt an icy chill as she passes by, while others hear the rustle of her dress on the wind. Another terrifying presence is the Red Lady, a ghostly woman in a crimson-hued dress who haunts the churchyard's oldest section. Her identity remains a mystery, but many believe she's the spirit of a grieving mother who lost her child and now wanders the graves in eternal mourning. Visitors have seen her weeping near the crumbling tombstones, her face hidden in her hands, only for her to disappear when approached. But perhaps the most unsettling ghost is the Gypsy Woman, an old, hunched figure who sits near a crumbling brick wall, smoking a phantom pipe. According to local tales, she was a real person who camped near the churchyard and cursed the village before her death. Now, her ghost lingers, watching visitors with hollow eyes. Some have smelled tobacco smoke where no one is present, while others swear they've seen her scowling at them from the shadows. With so many spirits crammed into one small churchyard, it's no wonder Pluckley attracts ghost hunters from around the world. Whether it's the screams in the woods, the weeping Red Lady, or the eerie Gypsy Woman, this graveyard proves that the dead here are anything but silent. Would you dare to walk among its ghosts after dark? For St. Marys Churchyard, Whitby. Perched high on Whitby's East Cliff, the crumbling graveyard of St. Mary's Church has watched over the North Sea for centuries, its weathered tombstones leaning at eerie angles as if trying to escape the earth. This is no ordinary burial ground, it's a place where history and horror collide, where the line between legend and reality blurs in the sea mist. By day, visitors come to admire the stunning coastal views, but as darkness falls, something far more unsettling takes over. The churchyard's fame as one of Britain's most haunted spots began in 1897 when Bram Stoker used it as inspiration for Dracula's arrival in England. In the novel, the undead count emerges from a wrecked ship in Whitby Harbour before transforming into a large dog that bounds up the 199 steps to this very graveyard. But fiction here is overshadowed by fact. Numerous witnesses have reported seeing a phantom black hound with burning red eyes prowling between the graves, its growls echoing through the night. Locals whisper that this is no ordinary ghost dog, but a demonic presence that heralds death. More disturbing still are the accounts of the crying woman who haunts the churchyard's far corner. On stormy nights, her heartbroken sobs can be heard near a cluster of unmarked graves where shipwreck victims were buried. Several brave souls who've investigated the sound claim to have seen a translucent figure in soaked Victorian clothing, her arms outstretched as if searching for loved ones lost at sea. The smell of saltwater and seaweed often accompanies her appearances, even on dry nights. Perhaps the most chilling presence is that of the shadow monk, who glides silently along the churchyard's perimeter wall. Believed to be the ghost of a medieval monk from Whitby Abbey, this dark-robed figure appears moments before tragedy strikes. Fishermen out at sea have reported seeing his silhouette standing on the cliff edge when storms approach, and locals tell of him appearing before shipwrecks and drownings. In 1914, an entire lifeboat crew swore they saw him watching from the churchyard as they launched to a doomed rescue mission. Modern visitors continue to experience unexplained phenomena, sudden temperature drops, the feeling of unseen hands brushing against them, and strange mists that move against the wind. Photographs often reveal mysterious orbs and unexplained figures standing among the graves. The churchyard's energy seems strongest near the suicide graves, where those denied Christian burial were interred. Here, many report overwhelming feelings of sadness and despair that vanish the moment they step away. As the moonlight filters through the skeletal trees and casts long shadows across the uneven ground, it's easy to believe that the dead here never truly rested. Whether it's the ghostly hound from Dracula's pages, the weeping woman mourning her lost family, or the ominous shadow monk warning of death, St. Marys Churchyard remains one of England's most authentically haunted sites. The real question isn't whether the ghosts exist, it's whether you're brave enough to meet them after sunset. 5 Crossbones Graveyard, London. Beneath the bustling streets of Southwark lies one of London's most tragic and haunted burial grounds, Crossbones Graveyard. This unconsecrated patch of earth holds the bones of nearly 15,000 souls, mostly prostitutes, paupers, and unwanted children who were denied proper Christian burials. Known as the Single Women's Churchyard, in the 18th century, it was the final resting place for the Winchester geese, sex workers who serviced clients under the license of the Bishop of Winchester. Today, their angry, restless spirits are said to haunt the site, making it one of London's most active paranormal locations. The haunting activity began long before the graveyard was rediscovered during tube construction in the 1990s. Workers reported hearing women's whispers and children's laughter in empty tunnels, while others felt invisible hands tugging at their clothes. When archaeologists began excavating, they uncovered mass graves with bodies piled 5 deep, many showing signs of violent deaths. Almost immediately, strange occurrences plagued the site, tools went missing, equipment malfunctioned, and several workers claimed to see ghostly figures watching them from the shadows. The most frequently reported apparition is the gate's ghost, a pale woman in tattered Elizabethan dress who appears near the memorial gates. She's often seen weeping before suddenly vanishing into thin air. Mediums who have visited believe she's one of the prostitutes who died in childbirth, forever searching for her lost baby. Visitors frequently leave ribbons, flowers and small toys on the gates in her memory, and many report feeling a motherly presence when they do so. At night, the graveyard takes on an even eerier atmosphere. Security guards and local residents have reported hearing muffled screams and moans coming from the ground, as if the buried dead are crying out in pain. Others have witnessed shadowy figures moving between the trees, their hollow eyes watching anyone who dares to approach. The most disturbing accounts come from those who have felt sudden, overwhelming despair upon entering, as if absorbing the collective suffering of thousands of tormented souls. Perhaps the most active spirit is that of a young girl called Lily, who has been seen by multiple witnesses playing near the memorial shrine. Paranormal investigators have captured EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, of a child's voice saying, "Help me," and "I'm cold." During one investigation, a teddy bear left at the shrine was later found moved to a different grave with no explanation. What makes Crossbones uniquely terrifying is how recent the haunting activity is. Unlike ancient hauntings where stories become exaggerated over time, people continue to report fresh paranormal encounters here weekly. The energy seems strongest on the 23rd of each month, the date when the graveyard was officially closed in 1853. On these nights, locals claim you can hear the faint sound of drunken laughter and music floating from the empty yard, as if the dead are holding one last party before returning to their graves at dawn. Today, the graveyard stands as a memorial garden, but the dead here clearly haven't moved on. Whether it's the weeping gate's ghost, the playful spirit of Lily, or the hundreds of unnamed souls beneath the soil, Crossbones remains one of London's most powerful reminders that some wounds, and some spirits, never heal. 6 St. Cuthberts Churchyard, Edinburgh. Tucked away in Edinburgh's historic old town, St. Cuthbert's Churchyard hides a dark secret beneath its peaceful appearance. While tourists flock to nearby Edinburgh Castle, few realize they're walking past one of Scotland's most haunted graveyards, a place where the dead refuse to rest quietly. The churchyard, dating back over 1,000 years, is said to be haunted by ghostly monks, shadowy figures, and even the restless spirit of a famous Scottish outlaw. The most common sightings involve phantom monks in dark robes wandering among the graves. These spectral figures are believed to be the spirits of medieval monks who once served at the original St. Cuthberts chapel. Witnesses describe seeing them moving silently between tombstones, their faces hidden in shadow, only to disappear when approached. Some visitors report smelling incense when no one is around, while others hear faint chanting in Latin, though the church is empty. One particularly terrifying ghost is known as the grasping phantom. Several people have reported feeling an invisible hand suddenly grab their ankle as they walk through certain parts of the churchyard. Those who've experienced this say it feels like a cold, bony hand coming up from beneath the ground itself. Local legend claims this is the spirit of a grave robber who was buried alive in the 1700s after being caught stealing from corpses. Now he tries to drag the living down to join him. The churchyard's most famous resident ghost is Deacon Brodie, an 18th-century criminal who inspired Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Though Brodie was hanged elsewhere, many believe his spirit returned to St. Cuthberts, where his family was buried. Visitors often report seeing a well-dressed man in 1700s clothing lurking near the Brodie family plot. He appears solid at first, but when people get closer, he vanishes into thin air. Some have even claimed to hear him laughing mockingly as he disappears. At night, the churchyard becomes even more active. Security cameras have captured unexplained lights floating between graves, and local police have been called multiple times to investigate figures moving in the graveyard, only to find no one there. The most chilling reports come from people who've seen a floating white mist that takes the shape of a human figure before dissolving away. What makes St. Cuthberts especially eerie is how many different types of paranormal activity occur there. From ghostly monks to grasping hands, from famous criminals to mysterious mists, this churchyard seems to contain centuries of unresolved spirits. The air often feels heavy, as if weighed down by all the unfinished business of the dead. Visitors frequently report sudden drops in temperature, feelings of being watched, and an overwhelming sense that they're not alone, even when the churchyard appears empty. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, St. Cuthbert's Churchyard has a way of making skeptics think twice. With so many consistent reports over so many years, it's hard to dismiss everything as imagination. The dead here seem determined to be noticed, their stories refusing to fade away with time. One thing is certain. After dark, this is not a place where you'd want to find yourself alone. 7 Brimpton Cemetery, London. In the heart of West London lies Brimpton Cemetery, a sprawling Victorian burial ground where the line between the living and dead grows dangerously thin. By day, it's a peaceful park where office workers eat lunch among the elaborate tombs. But as twilight falls, something far more sinister awakens. This is where Londoners have reported seeing full-blown phantom funeral processions, ghostly mourners who vanish when approached, and the infamous White Lady, who drifts between the graves searching for her lost child. The most frequently reported haunting is the Eternal Funeral, an entire ghostly burial party that appears suddenly near the central colonnade. Witnesses describe seeing a horse-drawn hearse from the 1800s moving silently across the paths, followed by mourners in Victorian black crepe veils. The terrifying part? When brave souls try to follow the procession, it simply disappears, sometimes mid-step, leaving behind only the faint smell of funeral flowers. Cemetery workers claim these apparitions appear most often on foggy mornings, when the air hangs heavy between the tombs. Then there's the White Lady, perhaps Brimpton's most tragic ghost. She's been seen for over a century near the northern catacombs, always wearing a tattered wedding gown, her arms outstretched as if cradling an invisible baby. Those who've encountered her up close say her face shows pure anguish, her mouth open in a silent scream. Paranormal investigators believe she's the spirit of a young mother who died in childbirth, buried here in the 1860s. Several visitors have reported suddenly feeling overwhelming grief near her apparition site, even if they knew nothing of the legend beforehand. But Brompton's ghosts aren't all sorrowful specters. The chess player ghost haunts the cemetery's southwest corner, an elderly man in 19th-century clothes who appears sitting at one of the cemetery's stone tables, moving invisible chess pieces. When approached, he looks up, smiles sadly, and dissolves into the air. Cemetery staff report finding the chess table's surface mysteriously clean of bird droppings and leaves, even after storms, as if someone keeps it tidy. The creepiest accounts come from nighttime visitors who've heard phantom footsteps keeping pace with them along the main avenue. Many report feeling an unseen presence walking beside them, sometimes so close they can hear breathing. Several have turned to look and glimpsed shadowy figures that disappear when directly observed. Security cameras have captured unexplained mists forming into human shapes near the catacombs, moving against the wind before vanishing through solid walls. What makes Brimpton Cemetery uniquely terrifying is how many different types of hauntings occur in one location. From full apparition funerals to lingering emotional imprints, from playful spirits to menacing shadows, this graveyard seems to hold every variety of ghost. The air often feels electrically charged, as if the veil between worlds is thinner here. Visitors frequently report sudden dizziness, unexplained chills, and the unsettling feeling that the graves are somehow watching them. With over 200,000 burials in its 39 acres, Brimpton Cemetery holds enough tragic stories to fuel hauntings for centuries to come. Whether it's the White Lady's eternal grief, the chess player's lonely games, or the phantom mourners reliving their final goodbyes, one thing is clear: in this cemetery, the dead don't just rest in peace. They linger, they watch, and sometimes, they invite the living to join them. After sunset, you might just find yourself attending a funeral where all the mourners have been dead for over 100 years. 8 St. Andrews Old Churchyard. Nestled in the quiet village of Cherry Hinton near Cambridge, St. Andrews Old Churchyard appears peaceful by day, but locals know better. This ancient burial ground, with its crumbling headstones and weathered tombs, hides one of England's most persistent and terrifying ghosts, the Black Lady, a sorrowful spectre said to drag the living into her eternal darkness. The legend of the Black Lady stretches back centuries. Most believe she was a grieving widow from the 1600s who lost her entire family to plague. Unable to bear her loneliness, she drowned herself in the nearby brook, only to be denied burial in consecrated ground. Her angry spirit is said to have clawed its way back into the churchyard, where she now lingers near the old yew tree, waiting for victims to share her despair. Those unlucky enough to encounter her describe a tall, shadowy figure in tattered black robes, her face hidden beneath a hood. But it's her eyes that chill witnesses to the bone. When she lifts her head, hollow sockets glow with a faint, unnatural light. Many report feeling an icy grip on their wrists or shoulders, as if she's trying to pull them toward the oldest graves. Several visitors have fled the churchyard with unexplained scratches or bruises after twilight encounters. The most disturbing accounts come from couples. At least 5 pairs of lovers over the decades have reported seeing the Black Lady mimicking them, standing eerily close behind one partner, mirroring their movements with a delay, like a macabre shadow. When confronted, she allegedly lets out a blood-curdling wail before vanishing. Locals whisper that she envies the living their happiness, and seeks to corrupt it. But the Black Lady isn't the only horror here. The churchyard's suicide corner, a neglected patch near the back wall, is avoided even by daylight. Those who ventured there speak of sudden nausea, the sound of whispered arguments in no known language, and an overwhelming urge to flee. In 1983, a groundskeeper reportedly found a set of fresh footprints in the frost leading directly to a sealed tomb, with none leading away. Modern paranormal investigations have captured EVPs, ghostly voices, pleading, "Let me out," near the yew tree, and thermal cameras have detected human-shaped cold spots moving against the wind. Most chillingly, several visitors have photographed a black mass with faint facial features lurking behind them in selfies, always in the same corner of the churchyard. What makes St. Andrews uniquely terrifying is how personal the hauntings feel. Unlike distant apparitions seen from afar, the Black Lady engages with the living, touching, mimicking, and even chasing visitors. The air here grows thicker as night falls, carrying the scent of rotting flowers even in winter. Locals insist the ghosts are growing stronger, with more sightings in recent years than in the past century combined. Whether the Black Lady seeks company, revenge, or simply to spread her misery, one thing is certain: this churchyard doesn't just have ghosts, it feeds them. After dark, the old yew tree's branches creak like bones, the shadows move without light to cast them, and something cold and desperate waits to pull you into the grave with her. Cross the threshold at your peril. The dead here don't just watch, they reach back. 9 St. Peters Churchyard, Higham. In the quiet Norwich suburb of Higham, St. Peters Churchyard hides a chilling secret behind its weathered tombstones and ivy-covered walls. By day, it's a typical English churchyard, peaceful, picturesque, and dappled with sunlight. But as dusk falls, something stirs among the graves. This is the domain of the Grey Lady, a sorrowful spirit whose whispers have driven visitors to flee in terror for generations. The Grey Lady's story begins in tragedy. Local records suggest she was Margaret Potton, a heartbroken widow from the 17th century who lost both her husband and young daughter to a sudden fever. Unable to bear her grief, she reportedly hanged herself from the churchyard's great oak tree, only for her body to be buried in unconsecrated ground near the perimeter wall. Now, her ghost drifts endlessly between the graves, her tattered grey dress fluttering in wind that isn't there, her skeletal hands clutching a phantom bundle believed to be the child she lost. Visitors report encountering her in different ways. Some see her as a pale, translucent figure gliding along the path near the old oak. Others only hear her, a harsh, rasping whisper that seems to come from right beside their ear, though no one is there. The words are never clear, but those who've heard them describe feeling sudden, overwhelming despair. Several witnesses have fled the churchyard in panic, claiming the whispers followed them all the way to the gates. But the Grey Lady isn't the only spirit here. Near the crumbling witch's grave, so called for its strange, crooked headstone, visitors report sudden temperature drops and the smell of burning herbs. Some have captured photos showing a hooded figure crouching behind gravestones, though no one was present when the picture was taken. Others tell of a shadowy dog with glowing eyes that stalks the perimeter before vanishing through solid walls. The most disturbing encounters happen near the church's abandoned charnel house. At least 3 people have reported seeing the Grey Lady crawling on all fours near its entrance, her movements jerky and unnatural. One teenage witness in 2018 described her head twisting completely backward to stare at him before she scrambled into the darkness. The charnel house door, long sealed shut, was found ajar the next morning, though no human could have opened it. Modern paranormal investigations have yielded terrifying evidence. EVP recordings contain guttural growls and the sound of a woman sobbing. Thermal cameras have detected child-sized cold spots moving independently near the old oak. Most chillingly, in 2020, a local historian discovered fresh rope marks on the oak's branches, though no rope had been tied there in living memory. What makes St. Peter's Churchyard truly unsettling is how personal the hauntings feel. Unlike distant apparitions, the Grey Lady seems to notice visitors, turning to watch them, whispering directly into their ears, even following them home. Locals tell of nightmares plaguing them after visits, always featuring a grey-clad woman standing at the foot of their bed. The air here grows heavier as night falls, until every rustle of leaves sounds like a sigh, every shadow seems to move with purpose. This isn't a place where ghosts simply replay their deaths. Here, they interact, they remember, and worst of all, they want something from the living. Whether it's comfort, company, or something more sinister, one thing is clear: the Grey Lady doesn't just haunt St. Peter's Churchyard. She owns it. And after dark, when the whispers start and the shadows begin to move, you'll realize, too late, that you were never alone here at all. 10 St. Thomas Churchyard, Portsmouth. The cobbled paths of St. Thomas Churchyard in Portsmouth tell a story much darker than the crumbling headstones suggest. This quiet burial ground, nestled between modern buildings in England's naval city, holds the restless spirit of a brutally murdered sailor whose ghost still walks the grounds, desperate for justice. Unlike typical graveyard phantoms, this spectre doesn't just appear, he interacts, leaving visitors shaken to their core. The haunting centers around a plain, unmarked grave near the church's south wall. Local historians believe this is where they buried an 18th-century sailor named Thomas Atkins, stabbed to death by his shipmates after winning a fortune in a dice game. His killers were never caught, and according to legend, his dying curse was that he'd never rest until someone uncovered the truth. Now, his angry ghost makes sure no one forgets. Witnesses describe encountering a hulking figure in tattered naval uniform, his face obscured by an old-fashioned hat, standing near the unmarked grave. But it's what happens next that chills the blood. The ghost speaks. Multiple visitors report hearing a hoarse, watery whisper saying, "They took my silver." Right in their ear, though no one is there. Some feel an icy hand grip their shoulder, while others smell the sudden stench of rotting seaweed and blood, even on dry land. The most terrifying encounters happen near the Sailor's Corner, where several naval men are buried. Here, people report seeing the ghost replaying his murder, a shadowy tableau of figures lunging at empty air, accompanied by the sound of tearing cloth and a gurgling scream. The scene always ends the same way, with an invisible body hitting the ground, followed by the sound of running footsteps that fade into nothingness. But the sailor isn't the only spirit here. The churchyard's old watchtower is haunted by something far more sinister, a shadowy figure called the boatswain, who appears at the top of the stairs, his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Those who've climbed the tower report feeling invisible ropes brush against their skin, as if someone were tying nautical knots around them. One teenager in 2015 swore something yanked him backward by an unseen noose, leaving rope burns on his neck that lasted for days. Modern ghost hunters have captured compelling evidence here. EVP recordings contain distinct sobbing and the phrase, "Portside, watch portside." Thermal cameras show human-shaped cold spots moving against the wind. Most disturbingly, several visitors have photographed wet footprints leading from the unmarked grave to the church door, though it hadn't rained in weeks. What makes St. Thomas Churchyard uniquely terrifying is its violent energy. This isn't a place of sad ghosts, it's a place of angry ones. Visitors often report sudden bursts of rage, the urge to flee, or the overwhelming sense that they're not welcome. The air grows thick near the unmarked grave, until breathing feels like choking on salt water. Even hardened skeptics leave feeling unsettled, as if they've narrowly escaped something terrible. The murdered sailor's ghost doesn't just haunt this churchyard, he hunts it, pacing the grounds like a caged animal. Some say he mistakes living visitors for his killers, others believe he's searching for someone to finally hear his story. Either way, one thing is certain, after dark, when the fog rolls in from the harbor and the churchyard gates creak on their hinges, you'll understand why locals cross the street to avoid this place. Because in St. Thomas Churchyard, the dead don't just rest in peace, they remember, they rage, and worst of all, they wait.